Now, under this heading, caste system, there are 3 units. One is perspectives on the study of caste. Perspectives means the way of looking at something. So, how different sociologists have looked at caste. All right. Then the second is features of caste system. And the third is untouchability. Now, how I plan to proceed is, first I'll talk about features of caste system, presuming that you do not have a background in sociology. So, if I talk straight away in terms of perspectives, you will have a little problem understanding. But once you become familiar with caste system, then perspectives you will be able to understand easily. Now, what is caste or what is caste system? Caste system refers to the system of inequality that existed in India. Now, one. Secondly, the word caste is not an Indian word. None of the Indian scriptures or Indian literature prior to British, you will find a mention of the word caste. The word caste is Portuguese word. The original Portuguese word is casta. Casta means color. All right. So, it so happens that in the beginning, color was the basis of inequality. And that is how various British scholars, they started talking about caste. And then it became so commonplace that today everyone talks about caste. Now, second thing I wanted to tell you, that as society changes, and no society is changeless, every society has been undergoing change. The only difference is sometimes the change is slow, sometimes the change is rapid. So, as Indian society has been changing, inequality has also been changing. Inequality is a part of society. So, as society changed, the system of inequality also changed. And therefore, caste system, whatever we call caste system, also has been changing over time. And what it means today is very different from what it meant 100 years ago or prior to that. All right. Now, let's start from the beginning. That is, I shall talk about very briefly the origin of caste system. The earliest we can go back in history is the Indus Valley. Indus Valley civilization. for which we have some archaeological evidence, but that evidence is very limited. So, Indus Valley society did have inequality. That has been established. How? There are various archaeological evidence. For example, the size of the house. We know that rich people tend to live in bigger houses, poor people live in smaller houses. So there was a significant difference in the residential quarters. They say the citadel area had large buildings. Low-lying areas have smaller buildings. They say it was a kind of oligarchy. A small group of people ruled. Oligarchy means a rule by a small group of people. Now, but beyond that, we don't know what was the system of inequality. Another indication which I'll again talk about in the lecture, a very unusual thing about Indus Valley was obsession with bathing, taking bath. That obsession continues to this day. That only after taking bath we get purified. Only then we can go to the temple. Bathing is very important for Hindus. Now, Indus Valley civilization was the only one where every house had a bathroom, sewage and drainage system, and there were public baths. Like today, also people go to Haridwar for a public bath, or Kumbh Mela, crores of people take baths together in public. So that tradition goes back to Indus Valley time. And as I said, among Hindus and also among Muslims in India, at least Indian Muslims, bathing is considered purificatory, purifying. In Urdu, they call it nazis, and not have in a state of, or without taking bath, you are in a state of nizasat. So, this idea is closely connected to caste. So, there is a speculation that perhaps something like this existed in the Indus Valley times. Then we move on to Rig Veda, the Aryan period, post Indus Valley period. God. There were deities. There is Proto Shiva that has been discovered. So there is some kind of worship. How it was defined, we don't know, because the script has not been deciphered even today. Proto means original. Perhaps the whole earlier idea of Shiva goes back to Indus Valley. Now, further, when we look for evidence, so we have written evidence, literature. Indus Valley, we don't have written literature. So we have only sketchy data on the basis of which we make a guesswork. The earliest written document is Rig Veda, which was composed over a period of centuries, roughly from 1700 BC to another 400 or 500 years later. During that period, this Rig Veda was composed. Rig Veda talks about inequality. And in Rig Veda, there is a use of the term Varna. Actually, it in the early part of Rig Veda. Rig Veda, as I said, was composed over a long period of time. So, later part of Rig Veda is different from the earlier part of Rig Veda. Early Rig Veda talks about two kinds of people. Arya Varna and Krishna Varna. Krishna in Sanskrit means dark. So, those people who composed Rig Veda, they called themselves Arya Varna, fair color. And the indigenous population of India, people who lived in India before the Aryans arrived, they were defeated in war and enslaved. They were called dasas, and dasas were of Krishna Varna. So the division was between fair colored people who were the ruling class, who were the rulers, and the local people who were called dasas. And that is why Europeans, when they try to interpret Hindu scriptures, Sanskritic scriptures, they, looking at Varna as color, they said caste division. That is why the word caste came into being. Now, the Aryans, and how do we know they were Aryans? Because they defined themselves as Aryans. There are inscriptions where they call themselves Aryans. And Aryans not only moved to India, they first came to Iran, then to Afghanistan, and then moved into India, into the Gangetic region. So inscriptions in Iran talk about Aryan. Arya Sitra, that means son of an Aryan. So that is how we call them Aryan. So the local population were called dasas. And therefore the system of inequality was all right. Now, this is where there was a clear divide. Dasas were looked down upon. In fact, they were talked about as amanush. The Aryans called themselves Manushya because of descendant of Manu. And they said dasas were not the descendants of Manu because they looked so different. They were dark and short in height. So they were not descendant of Manu, so they were called Amanush. They were treated as slaves or servants, menial servants. And there was a strict prohibition of intermarrying with the dasas, particularly marriage of women. Women were not allowed to marry the dasas. One of the reasons for this, they say that Aryans had shortage of women. So they called it against the law of nature. Even today it is called anuloma, against the law of nature. Because those things which are short, you will not give to outsiders. All right. Now, Aryans were not themselves totally homogeneous. Internally, Aryans were divided into three categories. Brahman. Who were Brahmins? Brahmins at that time, Brahma, the word Brahma, you must have heard of this term, though today the meaning of Brahma has also changed. Brahma meant the shlokas or poetry that was composed to propitiate the forces of nature. Aryans in Rigvedic time worship the forces of nature. Agni, Surya, like that, wind, thunder. These were the forces of nature which they worshipped. And they used to compose poetry to propitiate the forces of nature. That poetry was called Brahma. And those who were good at composing poetry became Brahman. Now, you are also familiar that Aryans were warlike people. They defeated the local population in battles, so they had warriors. They were called Rajanya. Later on, this word Rajanya changed into Kshatriya. Originally, they were called Rajanya. Rajanyas were those who were good in warfare. And they were also entrusted with administrative responsibilities. All right. And then there were Vis. Vis meant common people. The word Vishwa comes from Vis. Vishwa is the place where Vis live. All right. So those who did not excel either in poetry composition or in warfare, they were Vis. Now, when you look at caste today, one thing that comes to your mind is that membership of the caste is based on birth. This was not the case in the beginning. Son of a Vis can be a Brahman, and son of a Brahman can be a Vis. This was based purely on individual merit, individual talent. So they were not rigid categories, but this is how the society was categorized. This was the scenario when Aryans were in Afghanistan region. And this is where the color was a significant factor. Later on, by the time the Aryans moved into Gangetic region, we find the only source of evidence is the last chapter. It is called Mandala. 10th chapter is the last chapter of Rig Veda, 10th Mandala. In that, there is a hymn, a shloka, which is called Purush Sukta. It was believed by Aryans that there was Adi Purush, the primeval man, who created this world. Later on, that primeval man came to be known as Brahma. one of the gods, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, Subrahma. So, the primeval man, original man, destroyed his body to create society. Those who came out of the mouth, they were called Brahman. Those who came out of the arms signify valor, warrior-like quality. They were called Kshatriya. Those who came out of the thighs were called Vaishya. And those who came out of the feet were Shudra. So this is how the last chapter of Rig Veda says that society is organized in terms of 4 Varnas. This is called Chaturvarn doctrine or Chaturvarn scheme. Now, this is very different from what early Rig Veda says. Now, it so happened that by that time, Aryans started intermarrying with local population because of acute shortage of women. And therefore, the color bar melted away. Thick separation between fair and dark. That separation ended. What resulted was an Indian color, sallow, सांवला color जिसे बोलते हैं. In fact, one brother would be fair, other brother would be dark. So, color lost its significance. Now, Aryans, when they were in Afghanistan, they were pastoral. Pastoral, you understand? Animal husbandry was their main occupation, particularly cow. And horse. So they were domesticated. But as they came further down into Gangetic plain, where the soil was alluvial soil, which could be easily worked upon because Afghanistan soil is rocky soil. It is a mountain region. So they developed a wooden plow and they domesticated plant also. They started growing crops. And as a result of that, a division of labor developed in society. Different people perform different tasks. You understand division of labor? How different tasks or work are allocated among the members. That's called division of labor. Like men go and work outside home, earn the livelihood, women manage the home. It's a case of division of labor based on sex. So social division of labor developed. And since color was no longer the basis of superiority, so ritual became the basis of superiority. Because actually, after the initial migration of Aryans, the later migrants, they were fairer than the original Aryans because who had intermarried and who developed the sallow complexion. So color was not the basis, ritual was the basis. And therefore, the role of the Brahman changed. Brahman was no longer only a poet, but became a priest, performing rituals. Rituals, so आप समझते हैं ना, religious practices. So, Brahman became the priest. In fact, there were elaborate books composed describing various types of rituals. Then the warriors, they became Kshatriya. And this became Vaishya. And the local population which were called Dasas earlier, they came to be known as Shudra. Shudras were menial servants. Vaishya consisted of peasants who cultivated land and artisans. Both were called Vaishya at that time. So fourfold division developed. अब आप एक समझने की बात है, why did it happen later? Why did it not happen earlier? देखो, priest who does not work, who only performs rituals, how would he stay alive? By collecting taxes from those who produce. Vaishyas were the producers. Only when the Vaishya can generate surplus, that there is enough for him to feed his family and also give something as a tax to the rulers. Alright? So it is only with the generation of surplus that this fourfold division developed. ये बात समझ में आ गई आपको? Surplus का link. That is why it is only when the soil became more fertile and wooden plow developed in the beginning that fourfold division developed. And now the basis of superiority was not color but ritual. So Shudras are not allowed ritual. There is a later on saying that if a Shudra secretly listens to Vedas, molten lead should be poured into his ears. He should be punished. So Shudras were totally denied access to rituals. Rituals were officiated by Brahmins and access to ritual was confined to Kshatriya. Rajanya became Kshatriya and to the Vaishya. That is how inequality developed. Rajanya or Kshatriya and Brahmins, they survived on the taxes that were collected from Vaishya. And Shudras were menial servants who did all the manual labor. So that is how we have a Chaturvarna scheme which is mentioned in the 10th mandala of Rig Veda. So the nature of caste changed from what it was in early Rig Veda to later Vedic period. कुछ लोग तो ये भी कहते हैं कि वो पुरुष सूक्त was composed much afterwards and was added to Rig Veda to give it sanctity, legitimacy. It was not at Rig Veda time because Rig Veda के time पे agriculture नहीं develop हुई थी. Later Vedic period में agriculture develop होती है. And with that, earlier they were all organized as tribes. Jana, आपने पढ़ा होगा हिस्ट्री में, एनसीईआरटी की किताबों में, जना. ट्राइब्स वर कॉल्ड जना. अब भी आजकल भी ट्राइब को कहते हैं जनजाति. So people were called Jan. But later on, Janpadas developed. Janpad is a territorial organization where people live. यहां पे टेरिटरी इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं थी क्योंकि there was no value of land because agriculture was not practiced. So they had to move from one place to another place. So ownership of property was not an issue. सेटल लाइफ कब डेवलप हुई? व्हेन एग्रीकल्चर डेवलप। जनपद से सेटल लाइफ शुरू होती। So every community, every group of people initially were organized as tribes. और ट्राइब का एक करेक्टरिस्टिक होता है which is valid even today, hereditary membership and endogamy. इसका क्या मतलब है कि membership of the tribe is on the basis of birth. Those who are born are called the members. And they are supposed to marry within the tribe only. All right. So people lived as tribes based on hereditary membership and endogamous practice. फिर वो और आगे proceed किया. They went on to what is now Bihar and Eastern UP, Jharkhand, by which time they discovered iron. वहां पे iron ores थी. And with that, agriculture became more productive. One, iron plow. Secondly, iron axe to cut the forest to generate more production. तो सरप्लस और बढ़ने लगा. Now, in this period, we don't have any detailed description, but from the basis of Hindu scriptures, one of the sociologists, his name is Deepankar Gupta, he says that this was the time, because जब आयरन एक्स और प्लो आ गया तो क्या कहते हैं सरप्लस और बढ़ गया, तो किंगडम स्टार्टेड डेवलपिंग. मगधा, देन मौर्यंस. किंगडम कैन ओनली डेवलप बिकॉज द किंग हैज अ स्टैंडिंग आर्मी. उनको कैसे फीड करेगा वो? Only when surplus is available in agriculture, which is transported to the king, and he distributes that among his officials and members of the army, soldiers. Now, so with this growth of kingdoms, monarchy, all land came to be owned by the king. इसके लिए a German sociologist, you might have heard of his name, Karl Marx, उसने सबसे पहले इसकी बात की थी. He was the first man to talk about it. He called it Asiatic mode of production. He has used the concept Asiatic mode of production. That means how social life was organized in Asia, particularly India, that was very different from what was there in Europe. तो यूरोप में तो प्राइवेट प्रॉपर्टी होती थी. इंडिविजुअल वुड बी ओनर ऑफ लैंड. इन इंडिया देयर वाज नो प्राइवेट प्रॉपर्टी इन द बिगिनिंग. लैंड वाज ऑल owned by the king. Then king allotted it to people for cultivation. And initially, agriculture was practiced by everyone. Along with that, they also practiced other occupational specialty, like कोई blacksmith बन गया, कोई weaver बन गया, like that, artisans. Because मैंने आपको बताया ना कि in the beginning, Vaishya means both peasant and artisans. So this was the time these groups were organized into single community village. Why do I say single community village? If today you see every village has so many jatis, isn't it? शुरू में ऐसा नहीं होता था. Till the time of Mauryan Empire, that was not the case. every village had one community. वो लोग hereditary endogamous थे, and they had an occupational specialty and also practice agriculture. These groups could be connected with Varna scheme. All right. So Varna represents the social organization associated with Asiatic mode of production. अब ये बात आपको समझ में आई कि नहीं, ये बताइए. अगर नहीं आई तो मैं और अच्छे से समझाता हूं और रिपीट करता हूं. एनीथिंग यू हैव नॉट अंडरस्टूड अबाउट इट. मैं क्या बताने की कोशिश कर रहा हूं ये मैं बता दूं आपको. मैं ये आपको बताने की कोशिश कर रहा हूं कि कास्ट सिस्टम में कैसे चेंज आया फ्रॉम वर्णा टू जाति. आजकल वी नॉर्मली टॉक ऑफ कास्ट एज जात. उसकी जात क्या है? तो जाति. जाति डिस्टॉर्शन ऑफ द वर्ड जाति. तो वर्ण से जाति कैसे बनी ये बताने की कोशिश कर रहा हूं. उसका फर्स्ट स्टेप है कि वर्णा स्कीम क्या थी. तो टेल मी वेदर यू हैव अंडरस्टूड इट. तो क्या था? वर्णा वाज अ टेक्सचुअल व्यू ऑफ सोसाइटी. टेक्स्ट का मतलब किताब, बुक व्यू. दैट इज हाउ इट वाज रिटन इन हिंदू स्क्रिप्चर्स. ऑलराइट. बट जो लिखा हुआ था वो हकीकत में नहीं था. वॉट एग्जिस्टेड इन रियलिटी वर ग्रुप्स विद हेरिडिटरी मेंबरशिप, एंडोगमी एंड सम ऑक्यूपेशनल स्पेशलिटी. और इनमें से जो लोग, those who were experts in their skills, they migrated to urban areas और उनको श्रेणी कहा जाता था शहर में. जैसे पाटलिपुत्रा में मैगस्थनीज ने कहा है कि there were 7 श्रेणीज. ऑलराइट. तो वो अर्बन आर्टिसंस थे who were expert in their craft. ऑर्डिनरी आर्टिजन तो गांव में रहते थे. They lived in the villages. The experts moved, those who excelled, they moved to the city and they became part of Shrenis. So the book view was that there are 4 varnas arranged in a hierarchy. Brahmin at the top, वो कहते हैं क्योंकि mouth is the uppermost part. Alright. And feet are the lowermost part. So Brahmins are at the top, Kshatriyas come next, then Vaishya and Shudras at the bottom. That is how inequality was described in the literature, books. In reality, every village had people based on hereditary membership, endogamy with an occupational specialty. These groups could be related to different varnas. जब वो आपस में एक दूसरे से कंपेयर करने लगते थे तो वर्णा का आइडिया आता था. तो दे लिंक देमसेल्फ टू वर्ना. कोई कहता था मैं क्षत्रिय वर्णा का हूं, वो कहता मैं वैश्य हूं. लाइक दैट. दिस इज हाउ इट वाज. आप ये तो समझ ही सकते हैं. यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड दैट अ वास्ट कंट्री लाइक इंडिया with no centralized authority, you cannot have a perfect uniform organization everywhere. Impossible नहीं है. या तो कोई एजेंसी होनी चाहिए जो उसको एनफोर्स करे. तो वर्णा हकीकत में नहीं था. Did not exist at the existential level. It was only at the textual level. Then Deepankar Gupta says that after the Mauryan Empire, a process began, and that process was increasing breakdown of central authority. All right, central authority means एक क्षत्र, एक रूलर सारी इंडिया को नहीं कवर करता था. अशोका के टाइम में मोस्ट पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया वर रूल्ड बाय वर्नास, बाय वन रूलर. आफ्टर दैट पॉलिटिकल फ्रेगमेंटेशन स्टार्ट. and various groups started capturing power. Now, when they captured power, how did they capture power? They mobilized their members of their group and militarily waged a battle and captured power. Now they needed a justification for their rule. लड़ाई तो जीत ली, लेकिन you can run a government or rule permanently when people accept your right to rule. गन पॉइंट पे या स्वॉर्ड के बेसिस पे रूल नहीं किया जा सकता. So they needed legitimacy. For that they needed the help of Brahmins. Brahmins will create literature by which they will say that these people are Kshatriyas. It is said that at least from the time of Magadhan Empire, there is no true Kshatriya. Whoever captured power became Kshatriya. Alright? So Kshatriya Varna remained, but the composition kept changing. Now, if I have captured power and I want that people should accept my authority, तो कोई तरीका अडॉप्ट करना पड़ेगा ना. जैसे एक चीफ मिनिस्टर बनता है, एंड इफ द चीफ मिनिस्टर इज वीक, तो वो क्या करता है? व्हाट डज ही डू? वो हर एमएलए को कुछ ना कुछ ऑफिस दे देता है, मिनिस्टर बना देता है, चेयरमैन बना देता है, कुछ ना कुछ देके, सो दैट ही गेट्स हिज सपोर्ट इन द असेंबली. वैसा ही वहां होता था. वहां पे मिनिस्टर तो नहीं बन सकते थे, जमीन थी, लैंड वॉज देयर. So land was given as a grant. Land was given as a grant to Brahmins. Land was given as a grant to members of the tribe. Land was given as a grant to important officials in return for their loyalty. आपने notice किया होगा, when BJP government came to power in Haryana, what they did was they changed the name of Gurgaon to Gurugram. It is based on the belief that Kurukshetra was ruled by Kauravas and Dronacharya was the guru of the chief Brahmin leader in the Kaurava society, Kurukshetra. Kurukshetra is derived from Kaurava. So the Kauravas, they gave land to Dronacharya and other Brahmins in this part of Haryana. तभी इसको गुरुग्राम, गुरु का ग्राम कहा गया है. That's why the name Gurugram. Now, whether this story is correct or not, I am not sure. But this fact is there. Brahmins were given lands and the tribe members were given lands. They were made the owners of land. पहले तो land was owned by the king. Now the land came to be owned by individuals. अब इतने जो all the artisans who were there, जो पहले जिनको किंग ने land allot की हुई थी to work, वो कहां जाएंगे? Where will they go? They'll go to the man who had land, offer their services in return for food. This phase has been called feudalization of Indian society. Earlier phase was Asiatic mode of production. That changed into feudal mode of production or feudalization. Feudalism तो आप समझते हैं ना? That's how Indian feudalism developed. So now every group who became a part of the village, they had come out of the tribes, and the tribe is hereditary endogamous group. So every group that converged to the village, they were called jatis, and every jati was hereditary endogamous in nature. That is how caste acquired a new meaning as jatis. Each jati was a hereditary endogamous group with occupational specialty. Each jati entered into the relation with the landowner. They rendered their services to the landowner and received food in return. So barber, mason, goldsmith, blacksmith, weaver, carpenter, ये सब लोग different. Then menial servants were also there. Every group was organized in the form of a jati. क्यों? क्योंकि सब लोग ट्राइब से निकल के आए थे and tribe is a hereditary endogamous group. So jati also remained hereditary endogamous group with an occupational specialty. And with the Varna scheme, idea of hierarchy was established. Hierarchy समझते हैं ना कि unequal position. लोगों की position, people's position is unequal in society. So this idea of hierarchy was maintained and jatis were ranked in a hierarchy. Now, hierarchy earlier was not so rigid. Mauryan time में hierarchy rigid नहीं थी. Why? Because Mauryan time में there was lot of trade, and with trade people could acquire wealth and change their position. With feudalization, urban centers disappeared. Ruralization of Indian society. Agriculture remained the only source of livelihood, and it was stagnant agriculture. So if I can't improve my position, I will not let somebody who is placed below me to come to my position also. Alright, so hierarchy became rigid. Caste-based hierarchy acquired a very rigid characteristic. Alright, repeat करूं. The point I am making is that during the Mauryan period, the hierarchy was there. Idea of hierarchy तो शुरू में ही है कि mouth is the uppermost part, so Brahmin are superior and Shudra come from feet, the lowermost part, they are inferior. So the hierarchy हो गई ना, Brahmin at the top, then Kshatriya, then Vaishya and then Shudra. अब this hierarchy but was not very rigid, because some Vaishya who were artisans, they successfully entered trade, acquired wealth and acquired a higher position. Alright, so hierarchy was not very rigid. You understand this point? This hierarchy became rigid after feudalization of society. क्योंकि trade vanished, opportunity to move up disappeared. So when you can't move up, the least you can do is to maintain your present position. So you would not let the person below you to climb up. So hierarchy became very rigid. Position in the hierarchy became based on birth. Your position cannot be changed. And later on, when the hierarchy became rigid, this is well established that at the time of Manusmriti, Manusmriti was written, composed in 2000, somewhere 200 AD, between 100 to 200 AD. By that time, caste system had acquired a rigid character. The inequality in India had acquired a rigid character. That change in the position was not permitted. And it was at this time, they say, Brahmins adopted the idea of purity pollution. Perhaps that idea was there in Indus Valley, as I told you, because of the bathing practices. Because Aryans never believed in purity pollution. Aryans, Rigvedic Aryans also did not believe in the idea of rebirth. Both these ideas were picked up by Brahmins and incorporated into the Hindu literature. So, those who were high in the hierarchy, they were considered pure. Those who were low in the hierarchy, they were considered impure. This idea of purity pollution. And secondly, karma theory developed, that people have rebirths and your position in this life is the result of karma of the previous life. You can't change the karma of your life, of the previous life, so you can't change your position. So karma theory provided a justification for a rigid hierarchy. And that is how the Jati model of caste developed. And to this were added other features like vegetarianism. Vegetarianism was an idea linked with purity. Original Aryans were non-vegetarians. In fact, all sections, including Brahmins, consumed meat. But with the rise of Buddhism and Jainism, who attacked Hinsa and emphasized on ahimsa, and therefore the Brahmins, in order to survive, tabhi Hinduism has not been displaced by Buddhism and Jainism. Because Aryans were very adaptive. They incorporated that idea in their own religion and therefore survived. So, non-vegetarianism came to be considered impure, looked down upon, inferior. That is why even today, Hindus have a guilt when they come to eat meat on Tuesdays or Navaratras and all that. So, this sense of guilt came because of this, that this is the influence of Buddhism and Jainism. So now food habits were defined in terms of purity and pollution. Liquor drinking was considered impure. The Rigvedic Aryans were heavy drinkers. Yes. So Rigvedic Aryans, उसको क्या बोलते हैं? It was called by a name. I'm not. Somras. So they used to drink liquor. Later on, alcoholism was considered inferior, as it was connected to idea of purity and pollution. And जो सबसे late comer थे, those who joined the Aryan society, the last, they were assigned the lowest place. They were considered the most impure and were subjected to many disabilities. That is how the idea of untouchability developed. So that Varna scheme remained in the books, but actual reality came to be characterized by hierarchy of jatis. This is how caste system developed. Before I proceed further, tell me if there is anything you have not understood.
How tribes become jati?
See, jati, the original meaning of jat is birth, the group that you belong to by birth. So, this has been the practice, universal practice in simple societies, that every group consisted of people who were born in the group. Alright. So this is what we call tribe. Alright. Now people lived as tribes. And as I said earlier, a tribe occupied an area. All the villages in that area were occupied by that tribe. Membership was based on birth, and they were endogamous. They married within At that time, there was no hierarchy of jatis. But these tribes were connected with that Varna model, like this tribe is Vash, this tribe is Kshatriya, like that, depending upon the task they perform. All right. Later on, when feudalization began and land came to be allotted individually, so artisans and service groups, they converged to that person, that area, to render their services in return for food. All right. So all these people came from the tribe. Tribe was hereditary endogamous. So jatis were hereditary endogamous groups, who were now ranked in a hierarchy. And notions of purity, pollution, karma theory, etc., they provided a justification of the hierarchy. And the hierarchy became rigid as economy became stagnant, because trade vanished. Clear? Or boliye. Anything you have not understood? All right. Now, this system has persisted with certain changes. We do not have a detailed idea about the exact character of jati-based hierarchy, because there were no sociological studies conducted. Sociological studies began only after the British rule. So, what is the nature of caste? One thing you understood, that caste represents a system of inequality. Hierarchy is a character of inequality. All right. So, caste system was a system of hierarchy. But what were its exact qualities, we do not have a precise idea. During the period of, say, medieval period, because there were no such studies conducted. Social sciences did not exist at that time. Now, in the 20th century with the British, they developed a lot of curiosity about Indian society, because India was so different from what they saw in Britain. So, they became interested in investigation of Indian society. Sociological studies started developing. So, based on these sociological studies, we have what is called the jati model of caste. We have the jati model of caste. Well, that model tells you in detail what is caste system. Here again, I'll repeat that notion of Varna still lingers on. We still talk about Varna, and ordinary people use the term Varna interchangeably with jati. I'll give you an example. Brahmin. Brahmin is not a jati. All right? Brahmin is a Varna. Brahmins are there in every part of India. But there are so many different groups of Brahmins. In Tamil Nadu, you have Ayers and Iyengars. In Kerala, you have Nambudiris. In Karnataka, you have Havyak Brahmins. In Maharashtra, you have Chitpavans. In Gujarat, you have Anavils. In northern India, you have Kankubj and Saraswat Brahmins. So, intermarriage is confined only to that region. Iyengar will not marry a Kankubj. But if we have to compare them, we will together that how is an Iyengar related to a concubes, we'll say both are Brahmin Varna. So Brahmin is a Varna, but we often use it in as caste. So the term caste today refers to both Varna and Jati. How we distinguish them? Varna is the caste as described in literature, book view of caste. And what is Jati? The field view of caste. That means हकीकत, जैसे caste हकीकत में मिलती है in the society, the field, that is called the field view. So both the terms are there. All right. And Jatis do try to relate themselves to Varnas. But this relationship cannot be perfectly established. I'll give you an example. Castes. They are a high ranking caste. All right. Some castes also claim that they are Brahmins, but they are neither Kshatriya nor Brahmin, not even Vaishya, but they are a high ranking caste. Caste of Amitabh Bachchan. Lingayats. They are a caste in Karnataka, but they reject the Brahmins. They say we are superior to Brahmins. Where do we fit in caste, Lingayats? So, although most jatis can be connected with Varna, but this is not true for every jati. Not every jati can be connected with Varna, and sometimes there is a lot of controversy. Some people say we are Kshatriyas, others will say you are not Kshatriya. In Maharashtra, there is a jati called Kanbis. Kanbi. Now, Shivaji was a Kanbi. And Kanbis were peasants, so considered Shudras. But after Shivaji captured power, he underwent a purificatory ritual and was declared a Kshatriya. And those who were benefited by Shivaji and later Maratha rule, they are called Shanavkuli Marathas. They claim themselves Kshatriyas, but actually they are Kanbis. Today, other Kanbis are therefore also claiming Maratha status. When there is a Maratha agitation, this includes all Kanbis. So, people claim that they are of a higher Varna. Sometimes this claim is accepted, sometimes it is not. So, Jati is the field view of caste, Varna is the book view of caste. Clear? This point clear to everyone? Now I'll move on to the Jati model. What is a Jati model? Or what is caste system as it existed in reality? When we say caste system, what is the system? System means a unified whole having interconnected parts. Where parts are interconnected, it is called a system. All right. So, caste as a system. That means the interrelationship among jati. How jatis are connected with each other. That is what is the meaning of caste system. All right. Now, caste as a system, first characteristic. Caste as a system tends to be localized. It is confined to a particular locality, at the most to a region, because there is no caste, and right now when I'm saying caste, I mean jatis. There is no caste which is all India. You have all India Varna. As I said, Brahmins are there in Kashmir as well as in Tamil Nadu. But jatis are not there everywhere. Jats are only in Western UP, Haryana, Punjab and Rajasthan. Otherwise, there are no Jats. Lingayats are only there in Karnataka. Reddis are only there in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. Velalas, Mudaliyas, they are only there in Tamil Nadu. So, every jati is localized. So, caste as a system is confined to a locality or at the most a region. Then, it operates as a system at the level of a village or a group of connected villages. It operates as a system only at the level of a village or a group of connected villages. Now, a village may have a number of castes or jatis. That number can vary. Some villages may have only 3-4 jatis. Some villages may have even 20 jatis, big villages. So, the number can differ. Now, caste as a system has many dimensions. One, it is a system of hierarchy or stratification. You understand stratification? Where groups are placed in a hierarchy one above the other. So, caste operates as a system of hierarchy or stratification. One. Then caste also acts as an economic system. Then caste also exists as a political system. Next, caste also functions as a kinship system. So, caste as a system has many dimensions. Now, I will explain each one of them. Starting with the first, that caste as a system of hierarchy of groups, or in other words, caste as a system of stratification. So, in caste as a system of stratification means jatis at the local level are arranged in a hierarchy. And this hierarchy of jatis has two dimensions. Hierarchy of jatis has two dimensions. That means there are two hierarchies simultaneously existing. One, the ritual hierarchy. And second, secular hierarchy. समझ गए आप? रिचुअल का मतलब religiously sanctified hierarchy. Ritual hierarchy is based on the idea of purity and pollution. Hindu thinking, worldview is dominated by the idea of hierarchy of purity and pollution. Not only people, even things are arranged in a hierarchy. For example, food cooked in clarified butter, जिसको घी कहते हैं. Food cooked in clarified butter is pure. Food cooked in water is less pure. Bodily emissions, things that come out of the body, saliva or sweat, perspiration, or menstrual blood, these are all considered polluted. Anything that is separated from the body becomes polluted. Saliva, as long as it is inside my mouth, is pure. जब उसको थूक दिया तो impure हो जाता है. So notion of purity pollution dominates everything. Death is the most impure thing. And fire is the purest. So this is how the Hindu worldview, their way of looking at the world, is characterized by hierarchy of pure and impure. All right, one. And this purity pollution comes into play only in relation with others. अपने आप में everything is pure, but when they relate to others, then idea of purity pollution develops. All right. So people have unequal levels of purity. That Brahmins, because they read and teach Vedas, perform yajna, which is considered a purest activity, lighting a fire, chanting of mantras. Mantras are pure. So Brahmins perform the yajna, so they are the purest. Then Kshatriyas come next in purity. Vaishya come following them, and then Shudra. And those who were the last comers, they were not allowed membership of the Shudra. They are called Panchamas, जिसको आज दलित कहते हैं. They are the most impure according to Hindu thinking. Now, so jatis, they enter into relations with each other by relating themselves to the Varnas. तो एक जाति कहेगी हम ब्राह्मण हैं, so we are the purest in the village. And this purity is expressed through rituals. तभी इसको ritual hierarchy बोलते हैं. The purity level is expressed through rituals. And there is one more thing. Impurity or pollution is contagious. Contagious समझते ना, एक से दूसरे को लग जाने वाली contagious बीमारी होती है, disease. So pollution is contagious. Purity is not contagious. If a Brahmin touches somebody with lower purity, वो lower वाला pure नहीं हो जाएगा, Brahmin impure हो जाएगा. Brahmin would become impure. So pollution is contagious, purity is not. And based on this, purity is expressed through rituals. For example, death. When a death occurs, the entire family becomes impure. And they have to perform purificatory ritual like taking bath and performing yajna. Bathing is considered purificatory. Now, so as long as they are, connected with or characterized with impurity, they should not come into contact with each other. तो वो घर में अकेले रहते हैं, क्वारंटाइन हो जाता. And more pure a person, more pollution he is amenable to. जैसे, to give you a simple crude example, white color gets dirty very fast. So purest people get polluted very fast. So they have to perform largest number of purificatory rituals. तभी डेथ के टाइम में वो 13 days तक, वो 13वीं का जो डे होता है तब तक दे कीप देमसेल्फ इन आइसोलेशन. Less pure, he doesn't get so polluted. So he doesn't need so much of purification. तो उनके लिए number of purificatory rituals would be few. So higher a caste, more the purificatory rituals. Lower a caste, less the purificatory rituals. Then this purity pollution is also reflected in exchange of food, water, and contact. A Brahmin will accept only what is called pakka food. Pakka food क्या होता है? Food cooked in ghee, fried food. So if you have to feed a Brahmin and you are not a Brahmin yourself, you must offer pakka food to him, fried food. But if a Brahmin is offering food to somebody who is not a Brahmin, he will give him kacha food. That means food cooked in water, which is less pure. So even the exchange of food and drink, there is clear separation traditionally. Who will accept water from whom? So exchange of food, drink, and even physical contact. In Kerala, this developed to absurd limit. They say even the shadow of a impure person will pollute a Brahmin. So Brahmin always goes with an umbrella. कि shadow ना गिरे उस पर, किसी की shadow ना गिरे. And Dalit तो समझते हैं ना, Dalit would have to maintain a distance of well defined 64 feet from a Brahmin, Nambudri Brahmin, because if he comes close, if his shadow even falls on the Brahmin, he'll get polluted. Alright. So like this, there existed a ritual hierarchy. People were ranked in terms of purity and pollution. Then there is one more thing. They talk about temporary and permanent pollution. Temporary pollution affects everyone. If I go out and I sweat, sweat is polluted, so I get polluted. But it is temporary. I come home, take a bath, I become pure again. Alright? And if I take a bath in Ganges, that is the purest. Now, but some people, because of their association with either death or with bodily excreta, urine, feces, it's like that, like scavengers, they are considered permanently polluted. So they cannot be purified with purificatory rituals. Like they take the hide of the dead animal, cattle when they die, so they handle with death. So they are polluted because death is the most polluting thing. So some people are permanently polluted. It is this permanent pollution which gave rise to practice of untouchability. So this is the ritual hierarchy of caste. At the same time, there is a secular hierarchy also. The secular hierarchy means ranking of jatis on the basis of either economic power, land, or political power, or numerical strength. Alright? So, That is the secular hierarchy. The biggest landlord, the jati which owns most of the land in the village, they are respected. They become the head of the village council panchayat. They command respect by virtue of being at the top of secular hierarchy. And those who are landless, poor, they are at the bottom of the secular hierarchy. Now, these two hierarchies do not perfectly overlap. All right, though to a large extent they do, because the one at the top of secular hierarchy cannot be considered untouchable, because Brahmin खाएगा कहाँ से, उसी के यहाँ से तो उसे खाना मिलेगा. So if he considered untouchable, then he would starve. Brahmin would starve. So those who are at the top of the secular hierarchy, they generally have a high position in the ritual hierarchy also. But the matching is not perfect. For example, Brahmin is at the top of the ritual hierarchy. But day-to-day life, who cares for a Brahmin? Only when a puja is to be performed, you call a Brahmin. Touch his feet. But otherwise, the real boss of the village is the landlord. All right. So, one sociologist, M.N. Srinivas, therefore, introduced the concept of dominant caste. That dominant caste is the one which dominates the secular hierarchy. It is not necessary that they should be dominating the ritual hierarchy. He cited the example. He studied a village in Mysore, and there is a caste called Okaligas. You must be remembering Devagowda, Doddegowda, Hardanhalli, Doddegowda, Devagowda. Have you heard of him? He was Prime Minister of India, I say, in 90s. So, Hardanhalli is his village. Doddegowda is his father's name. His name was Devagowda. So, these Gowdas of Karnataka, they are Okaligas. His son is a minister even now. And his grandson was famous for other reasons. Prajwal Gowda or. So, Okaligas, in terms of ritual hierarchy, they are low. But because in the southern Karnataka, they are dominant landlords, so they are at the top of the secular hierarchy. Real power in day-to-day life is with the Okaligas in the village. All right. So this is how there are two parallel hierarchies, which may overlap, which may not overlap. And dominant caste varies from region to region. Like in Western UP, Jats are a dominant caste. In Punjab also, Jats are called Jat, but they are also a dominant caste. In Haryana, they are one of the dominant caste. In some parts, Jats are dominant caste, in some parts, Ahir or Yadavs, Rao Indrajit Singh, who is the central minister, they are the dominant caste. In Rajasthan, Rajputs are the dominant caste. So, who is a dominant caste can vary from region to region. But dominant caste is the one which dominates the secular hierarchy. And now they say education is also another factor which determines your position in the secular hierarchy. So, dominant caste may be one whose members are highly educated and occupy high-ranking occupations. So, this is how we have caste as a system of stratification, traditionally. Now, later on separately, I'll talk about changes at every level, how things are changing. But before I describe the change, I must tell you the features of caste system. Then caste also acted as an economic system. As I told you that with feudalization, jatis converged around the families of the landowners and they entered into an economic exchange. Artisans, it can be seen like this. This is the landowner and there are families of occupational caste, different kinds of occupation. They all contributed their services around the year. And at the harvest time, they were all rewarded for their services. All right. This is a kind of economic exchange. Now, along with that, they render their services to each other also. All right. Now, this system in sociology has been given a name, Jajmani system. I'll tell you the history, how it came to be known as Jajmani system. There was one sociologist, William Weiser. He studied a village in eastern UP. Name of the village was Karimpur. Now, there he found that this, because the pivot around which the whole system operates is the landowning family. So, in that village, the landowners were called Jajman. Why were they called Jajman? Jajman is a colloquial word, which is a distortion of Sanskritic word Yajnaman. So, Yajnaman means the person for whom Brahmin will perform a yajna. And in return, he would receive gifts and food from the Yajnaman. So, actual word is Yajnaman. In day-to-day language, people can't pronounce Yajna, so they say Jajman. And William Weiser popularized this term. Now it has become generally accepted as Jajmani system. Although it is known by different terms, different names by different parts. In Maharashtra, it is called Balutedari. In Gujarat, it is called Hali system. In Andhra Pradesh, it is called Paleru system. In Karnataka, it is called Holeru system. So, local names are different, but in sociology, we call it Jajmani system. So, Jajmani system is, you can write down, an exchange of food, goods and services between landowning families and families belonging to occupational caste. Food, goods and services between landowning families and families belonging to occupational caste, artisans. I say occupational because it also includes service caste. Like dhobi, washerman, is a service caste. He is not an artisan. Now, they say this system was also a ritual system, that lower caste absorb the pollution of a higher. Washerman, see, when the clothes get dirty, they get polluted. All right, you give it to dhobi to wash. So dhobi removes the pollution. Now dhobi is not affected. Washerman is not affected because his pollution level is low. His purity level is low, so he will not get polluted. But a Brahmin, if he has to wash it, his purity level is high, he will get polluted. Similarly, barber, he gives a shave or cuts the hair. Hair, when they are removed from the body, are considered impure. So there is a ritual dimension also. And these relations are hereditary relations. Like the family of, say, a barber would be permanently connected with the family of a landowner. So when the present barber dies, his son would become the barber to the son of the landlord. So they are hereditary ties. This Jajmani system may extend to a number of villages in the neighborhood. For example, barber, you don't need a haircut every day or a shave every day. So what will do? He'll move to the next village, render his services there, then to the next village. So the system may operate in a group of connected villages. Similarly, say goldsmith. Goldsmith services are not needed always. They are needed only on ceremonial occasions. So he will not be able to get enough income if he confines himself to one village. So he may serve a number of villages. So like that, it operates in a group of connected villages. This is the caste as an economic system. Have you understood this? Anything you have not understood? Then, caste as a political system. Traditionally, caste also acted as a political system. That means at the level of village, there was a village council, panchayat, in every village. Now, in the village council, families of the dominant caste on a hereditary basis had a right to membership. So, dominant caste members, they decided all the issues concerning the village community. All right. So, this is at the village level. Caste acted as a political system at another level, at the level of a jati. All right. That every jati would have a panchayat, a council, to handle intra-jati matters concerning their own jati. And this jati council can sometimes extend beyond villages. You must have heard about Khap. Among Jats of Haryana and UP, there are Khap. These Khaps are the organization of jatis, within the organization within a jati. And a Khap may include, say, Jats of number of villages. Like some time back it was in use, I doubt if you read it in the newspaper, Meham Chobisi. Meham is the headquarter of a Khap, it's a village, and that Khap controlled the Jats of 24 villages. So it was called Meham Chobisi. Meham is the name of the village. I am giving you as an example of caste panchayats. So caste panchayats regulated internal matters of a caste. Village panchayat handled the matters of village as a whole, inter-caste relations. Then caste as a kinship system. Now caste is one divided into subcastes. Castes have subcastes, and these subcastes also exist in a hierarchy. I'll give you an example. Among Agrawals, they say Bisa Agrawal and Dasa Agrawal. Both are Agrawal, Vaishya community, but Bisa are superior, Dasa are inferior. So there is a hierarchy within a jati also. Jatis are divided into subcastes, and jatis are also divided into lineages. Actually, members of a jati are connected by two bonds. Birth, that means blood relations. Marriage, endogamy means marriage. So blood relations and marriage relations, that is what is called kinship. So it acted as a kinship system. And it is divided into often lineages. You know what is a lineage? Lineage is a kin group which consists of people who share a common ancestor. Like in day-to-day language in India, we call in Hindi Kul. Kul. You must have heard of Kul Devata, that every Kul has their deity. In Urdu, it is called Khandan. So, jatis are divided into Kul or Khandans, lineages. Alright? And they are also divided into subcastes. So, since the relation between members of the jati are either blood or marriage, so it acted as a kinship system. Clear? This is what we call caste as a system that existed at the field level, existential level, and this model is based on sociological research. People went and observed villages, and based on that observation, they arrived at this model. Now, as I said in the beginning itself, that Indian society has always been changing. And this is more so today. So, how valid is this model? This model was developed around 1930s to 1960s. During these 30 years, lot of studies, hundreds of studies were carried out. But 1930 means we are almost 100 years ahead. So, how relevant is this today? It remains only partly relevant. So, what they say is that there is both a persistence and change of caste. Persistence and change of caste. That means caste though continues, but as in a highly changed form. So, what are the changes? One, ritual hierarchy has drastically declined. See, when you travel in a train, you will not first check up the caste of everybody else in the compartment before you sit on the seat. So, चाहे वो अगले वाला untouchable है कि कोई भी है, you sit next to him. You go to a restaurant, you will not say, first tell me the caste of your staff. So, with urbanization, industrialization and secularization, with the spread of education, the ritual hierarchy of caste has drastically declined. I am not saying it has disappeared, because I will take up that topic later on, another topic, untouchability. So, untouchability is based on ritual hierarchy also only, and untouchability still exists to some degree. In urban areas, there is no ritual hierarchy. You may practice ritual only in domestic matters. जब किसी को खाने पे बुलाते हैं तब you may be conscious of the ritual. But otherwise, the anonymity of urban life makes it impossible to know the ritual status of a person. In rural areas also, because now rural areas are connected by road and railways, rural areas have tea shops, rural areas, have change in the occupational status. At one time, your occupation was dependent on caste. For example, a barber, everybody who belongs to the caste of barber would be called a nai, thinking that they are working as barber. But what you call as a nai may be the chief minister. Karpuri Thakur was a nai. The person you call nai may be an IAS officer or electrician. So occupational linkage has gone, and if he holds a higher position, like Mayavati, she doesn't hold the occupation, she belongs to Chamar caste, but she does not work as a leather worker. She was the chief minister. So ritual hierarchy has significantly declined. It lingers on only in the case of people with a very low ritual status who continue to be poor. आजकल ब्राह्मण्स लेदर शोरूम रन करते हैं, लेदर एक्सपोर्ट में जाते हैं. Where is pollution? Leather is considered polluting. That is why leather workers were considered untouchables. Now Brahmins or upper caste are in leather business. So ritual dimension of caste has drastically declined. There has been a study in a village by Adrian C. Mayer, Meyer. The village is Ramkhedi. He studied that village after a period time gap of 40 years. In 1950s, he found that in the village, when there was a feast, every caste member sat in a different room. But when he studied it in 1990s, people sat in the same row. When the ritual difference in their status was very large, so the lower status man left some space with the high status man and behaved very respectably towards him, but they don't sit in separate rooms. So modernization renders it impossible to practice the ritual hierarchy. And moreover, with secularization of life goals, secular hierarchy is more important. पैसा चाहिए, power चाहिए, not ritual status. You should not be surprised if Brahmins also demand OBC status. Jats, Marathas, Patels, they are already demanding. OBC means lower ritual status. So nobody wants to be a Brahmin today, because reservation to lower status में मिलती है, isn't it? So secular hierarchy has become more important. And then in the rural areas, even the secular hierarchy has become weak. Secular hierarchy itself is also mauled, damaged. Why? Because land fragmentation. सबसे बड़ी important चीज जो होती है रूरल एरिया में of your status in the village is the amount of land you control. You know, only 1.8% household are large land holdings. 90% of farmers' household are small or marginal land holding. जब लैंड इतनी कम रहेगी तो हायरार्की में क्या होता है? यू हैव टू गिव गिफ्ट and extend patronage to the poor who work for you. अब इतनी छोटी सी लैंड है, फैमिली only provides the labor. Maximum you hire the labor at the harvest time. Otherwise, you don't need rural labor. So even the secular hierarchy is getting impacted. It is no longer as conspicuous. And that is why they say, this has been a question also in the UPSC, that today we have discrete caste and muddled hierarchies. Discrete caste and muddled hierarchy. This is the concept given by Dipankar Gupta, and this was also a UPSC question. What does it mean? Discrete, discrete, separate. That each caste group is unconnected to the other caste group. Why? Because Jajmani relations have broken down. Because power is no longer based on dominant caste. Panchayat Raj institutions, reservation, Dalits have right to become a council president. So power is not based on caste-based hierarchy. Caste as a political system has gone. Caste as an economic system has gone. So each caste is separate. Alright? When you need to work on the land, hire a tractor. In 2 days your plot would be plowed. Then you don't need a worker to be connected to you permanently in Jajmani relations. So each caste has got separated. And the hierarchy is also muddled. Muddled, pata hai? Confused. Not very clear. You don't know who is superior in the hierarchy, who is inferior in the hierarchy. Because if I claim I am superior, other will say, no, we don't recognize you as superior. So the hierarchy itself is muddled. And this was also the question in the UPSC exam, perhaps very recently, that what is more relevant today regarding caste? Hierarchy or difference? So, hierarchy has given way to difference. Ab superior, inferior is not important. Alright. All that caste means, if you have one caste and I have another caste, we say we are different. Bas. I won't say I am superior to you, you won't say you are superior to me. Ab Yadav were actually a middle caste, and Rajput were an upper caste. Look at Bihar, a Kurmi, which is even lower than a Yadav, is the chief minister of Bihar. So will the Rajput say I am superior to you? Rajputs have no power. उससे पहले यादव, लालू यादव and his family, they had power. So the hierarchy idea itself is losing significance. It is giving way to difference. Difference तो अभी भी है कि शादी करते time when we are thinking of marriage, we say we will marry within our caste. They are different. उतना तो है, but hierarchy has lost its significance. Is on the way out. मैं ये नहीं कहूंगा कि बिल्कुल खत्म हो गई है, but is on the way out. The direction in which we are changing is hierarchy giving way to difference. Then subcaste differences have also disappeared in the hierarchy. That each caste was divided into subcaste. These subcaste differences have also lost their importance. Earlier, subcaste did not intermarry. As I gave you the example of Bisa and Dasa Agrawal, Bisa Agrawal will not give their daughter to a man from Dasa Agrawal. Earlier. Now, these subcaste differences are being ignored, even in the rural areas. So this is about caste as a system of stratification. We will continue with our discussion tomorrow. Any doubt or question you have, because we have to discuss the economic system, political system and other changes and the new forms that caste is taking. So we have a lot more to talk about caste, features of caste. But any question on what I have discussed so far, please tell me. Adrian C. Mayer studied a village in Madhya Pradesh. The name of the village is Ramkhedi. Ramkheri, Ramkhedi. Now, what he found was that even in the village, ritual hierarchy was on the decline. As I told you, in part of ritual hierarchy is contact, physical contact. Second part of the ritual hierarchy is sharing food. All right. Now, earlier, when there would be a feast in the village, each caste member will sit separately and they would be served by members of their own caste. Now all that has gone. So I can accept food from a lower caste man who is serving the food. He observed a feast. Head of the village, headman of the village, his father died. So he threw a feast. All people from the village were invited. He found that they sat in the same row and they accepted food from everybody, irrespective of his caste, except those who are at the very bottom of the hierarchy, what we call Dalits. With respect to them, there are problems still that we will discuss in detail when I take up untouchability. But otherwise, ritual hierarchy is losing its appeal. Clear? Any other question? Yes. No, that Brahmin was only one example. I said many things. Along with Brahmins, members of their tribe who helped them capture power were also given land. So in Andhra Pradesh, Warangal area, there was a Reddy kingdom. So Reddys all became upper caste. You hear about Reddys so often in politics. They dominate Andhra politics even today. So Reddys, similarly, I gave you the example of Shanavkuli Marathas. They were the ones who were given land by the ruler because they helped that man to capture power. So land grant was given not only to Brahmins, it was given to many people, including their government officials, people who worked as officers. They were also rewarded with land. Yes, please. Any other? Ha. Ha. Ha.
But in the case of landowners,
Ha.
the different tribes, how did they emerge into different community service providers became jatis? But
See, there is a single community living in a village. Now they lose land because the new ruler takes away that land and grants it to somebody. So how will they live? They divided themselves and moved to different families of the landowners, rendering their services to him in return for food. So that is how they got divided.
they were just giving, every landowner was giving the harvest. So how, I mean, you said Ayangars and Ayers. So how did landowners get proliferated into different jatis?
How did they become different jatis, sub-jatis? There are a lot of factors. Like Ayers are, they followed different practices. Ayers are Vaishnavite. Alright. The Ayers are, they call themselves Smart Brahmins and they follow Smart practices. Alright. So like this, on various regions they got divided. Every caste has subcaste. Any other question? No question? All right. Thank you. So we'll continue with caste system tomorrow.